And has Keir Starmer got it wrong by cutting winter fuel payments for pensioners? From this autumn, older people in England and Wales who are not on pension credit or other means-tested benefits will no longer get an annual fuel payment worth between £100 and £300. Now, a vote on the issue is being tabled next week, but several Labour MPs have publicly criticised the decision and may even vote against it. Now, yesterday, Keir Starmer had to defend his plan during Prime Minister's questions.
Why did he choose train drivers over Britain's vulnerable pensioners?
Mr. Speaker, this government was elected to clear up the mess left by the party opposition and to bring about the change that the country desperately needs. Our first job was to audit the books, and what we found was a £22 billion black hole.
And this is what Labour peer Baroness Harman had to say about the issue on Jeremy's show this morning.
To get the country stable and sorted again, all of those strikes needed to be sorted out. And most of them were because there'd been under-inflation pay rises for those people, and therefore the strikes needed to be settled to get Britain moving again. You know, money's tight in government because of, the financial inheritance, but also there are some people getting the winter fuel payment who really don't need it. It's about sorting out the financial foundations of the country in order to make things better for the future.
What do you think, Belinda? Is she right?
No, not at all. I mean, Keir said, I thought he was quite weak, by the way, yesterday in Prime Minister's questions time. He forgot who was Prime Minister at least 5 times and saying he has to audit the books and, they have to make tough decisions. They seem to find endless money trees for sort of pointless net zero madness schemes that cost billions a year. They could easily fill the black hole with that. They spaffed away £11.6 billion on a climate agency fund. I mean, this is madness, taking money away from saving lives of British people to spend on faraway lands. It's just immoral. We need to get back to using taxpayers' money to save the lives of the people here. And 25,000 older people die a year from cold homes.
And what's the impact on that, I suppose, for the NHS? Because all of these older people that aren't putting their heating on could have cold-related illnesses, end up putting more pressure there. I mean, did the maths add up to you, Bobby?
So again, the big picture is still this government has inherited a mess, economic mess by the Tories. 22 billion black hole, and that's been well documented in the last few weeks. So they do have to make difficult decisions about how to stabilise the economy. And this is one of those. And ultimately, those on pension credits will still get their winter fuel payment. But what they said is that they're going to be targeting winter fuel payments while still protecting pensioners. But let's not forget, there is still the triple lock on pensions, which is where the state pension increases by the highest, of either 2.5%, inflation or working wages.
But how can you morally justify Keir Starmer and his Labour Party increasing highly paid train drivers already, increasing their salary by £10,000 a year, far more than double the salary of a nurse, and pensioners on 13,000, because there's a huge group of pensioners just above the threshold that are going to be impacted, and people are going to die because of this. And basically, they've got the money they've just chosen, I think, out of spite. I think there is something very callous about targeting the elderly who don't vote for Labour generally, and who won't go out and protest on the streets when they keep getting hit by Labour's, taxes, and who knows what they're going to do in the future with pensions and with single household council tax. I think they're looking at that, raising the retirement age. I think the pensioners are going to, unfortunately, get hit quite hard by Labour, while they are lining the pockets of their trade union overlords, and as most of the uni party do anyway, is peacocking on the international stage, spending money on these vanity projects instead of the people back at home. Our elderly are going to suffer.
Do you think that it's a good look to give doctors 22% pay rise, train drivers 14.5%, I think, and now we're looking at train guards as well, their latest to be announced, I think that's about 15%. Is it a good look for Labour to be handing out these whopping pay rises when they are taking away winter fuel payments from potentially very vulnerable older people?
So I think when you look at the pay rise, you've got to say why they're doing this. I think it's to get the country moving again, because we've had doctor strikes, train strikes, and if we want to grow the economy, and ultimately, if we're going to fund our nation, it's going to come from higher tax takes from a growing economy, we need our trains to be working so people can get to work. We need our doctors to be looking after people medically. So there's a trade-off to be made. But one thing, again, I will say is that because the triple lock, actually, most pensioners will probably still see an overall rise of 100 to 200 quid a year.
I do wonder whether that's a fair comparison or that's a fair thing to bring up, because they were getting that anyway, so you've still taken away that 100 to 300 pounds. Let's find out what the viewers think at home. Janet from Kent, are you upset about the winter fuel payment? Do you think Keir Starmer might have made a mistake?
Yes, of course I am. Yes, of course I am.
So explain to me why. Do you feel better knowing that you'll be...
Because I think there's 2 or 3 things they can do, which I suggested last week, and nobody has answered my questions.
Oh, who did you suggest it to?
You get an extra 25 pence a week. What use is that? You can't even buy a stamp with it. Get rid of that for millions of over 80-year-olds. Every pensioner gets a £10 Christmas box. That's useless now. Take that away off of every pensioner. And can anybody explain to me why everybody gets a free prescription at age 60 and they're still working until they're 67?
No,
Why don't
actually.
they take that away? No, nobody knows that.
Okay.
Everybody gets free prescriptions because that used to be the female pensionable age.
But it's
and
increasing.
Of course, they brought it in for men as well, who were getting their pensions at 65. Well, everybody's getting a pension now at 67 and still working there, so they're getting 7 years free prescriptions.
Okay, I mean,
that is my argument.
In Scotland, you would get free prescriptions anyway, so it's slightly different up there. But
you get free prescriptions if you have an underlying health problem, if you're on certain benefits,
Janet,
or universal credit.
You mentioned
anyway.
Janet, you mentioned that you had said this to somebody and nobody had got back to you. Who did you contact?
I phoned in about this 2 weeks ago. I think, was it Matt Allwood that was Jeremy?
Oh right, you phoned into this show. I mean, as much as we talk about the government quite a lot,
everybody was surprised that you get free prescriptions at 60 and you're still working.
Yeah, I mean,
understand the sense of it.
I've never really thought about it myself, Janet, but you've made a really fair point there. I'm just wondering whether, we've heard the news now that because of the triple lock, pensions are going to go up potentially by about £400 a year. Does that make you feel any better?
Potentially. That's a very...
Well, it'll certainly be a substantial increase.
I'm just over the threshold anyway. My husband died before 2016, so I'm lucky enough to get an enhancement on his contributions. But I worked, and in those days when I was working from 15 until I was 60, you had to pay a full stamp for 39 years. And then they put it down a few years ago, but by that time I'd packed up working anyway.
Okay.
So I was actually paying about 4 or 5 years more than I should have been, national insurance contributions. Oh. And it's only when I went into my local tax office with my end of tax returns, and he said, "Why are you still paying national insurance?" So I've paid an extra 5 years. I don't get an enhancement on that.
Or get it back, Janet.
No.
That is very annoying. I can understand your frustration, Janet. Thank you very much for your call. Shirley from Hampshire, are you annoyed about this?
I'm not really annoyed. I think it's about time pensioners were a bit honest. Most pensioners spend their money on the Christmas. They don't even spend it on heating.
Okay. Sorry, Shirley, you're saying that most pensioners just sort of squirrel away their money until Christmas Day?
They don't squalor it. They use it for Christmas instead of heating.
So they're not putting their heating on because they're saving up for presents?
No, they're using the money for Christmas instead of heating, because if they were using it on heating, then all the electric and gas companies would have a £200 payment.
What are you talking? I don't understand what you're trying to tell me, Shirley. You're basically saying that they wouldn't spend this £300 on heating anyway. They would spend it on what at Christmas?
Food, presents for their grandchildren, presents for other people. They use it for their Christmas shopping.
Right. Shirley, okay, well, maybe that's true for some pensioners. Let's see if we can speak to somebody. Shirley, thank you very much for your call. Tim from Merseyside, what's your view when it comes to pensioners not receiving their winter fuel payments?
I think it's absolutely disgraceful. So what you've got is this Labour government is taking money, it's giving money to strikers, and it's taking it away from those who can't strike.
Okay.
Giving it to the most powerful in society and taking it away from the weakest in society. That is, for the first time in my life, I'm ashamed to be British.
Oh well, that is a big statement to make, Tim. But if we take away the what they have given to people and we just focus on what they've taken away, there are many pensioners out there who don't need the winter fuel payment, though, Tim. And the ones that are on means-tested benefits and pensioner credits, they will be getting these winter fuel payments. So the most vulnerable should be covered.
Well, no, that's just, an ex post facto argument, to say, well, you take it off them and then justify it afterwards because you're giving it to the strikers. No, that's not a valid argument to my point of view.
You've got to admit that there is some very wealthy pensioners out there.
I know, we keep hearing this from the left. All pensioners are rich. Take it off them because they're rich. It's a disgraceful argument.
Well, you're not hearing it from all the left because there's certainly members of Keir Starmer's party that are very unhappy about this and might actually just vote against it.
Yeah, but Keir Starmer is the Prime Minister.
Yeah, but interestingly,
those others against him are not in the government.
I wouldn't have said this was a particularly left policy, would you?
No, I've been very surprised. I think the Labour Party have turned into the nasty party very quickly overnight. I do think them targeting the elderly is very, very callous and deliberate because they can't fight back, and they are giving it to the powerful. I mean, you were saying just earlier that, but we have to avoid strikes and that's why we need to keep paying them more and more. I disagree. I say sack them if they're not going to work. Get a training program for train drivers within 6 months and hire a whole load more that are happy on £65,000.
Okay, but that would be fine for train drivers, but we're talking about junior doctors as well. Now, we're already missing junior doctors. We need to recruit more, and you're saying just sack the ones that aren't willing to work.
Train drivers.
Yes, but so it's different for doctors.
Years and years, I would say different for doctors, but it's absolutely targeting the vulnerable, and they've lost their moral compass within weeks of being in government.
Okay, Tim, thank you very much for your call. Vixen from London, what's your view on this one?
Oh, good morning, everybody. I actually think they've shot themselves in the foot with this one because we all know anyway that there's plenty of benefits across the board that people don't claim for various reasons, lack of knowledge, worrying about filling in forms, etc. But now this has been so out there, even if sort of like they've written, there's up to 1 million pensioners that don't get pension credit. So even if half of them now apply after this being in the news practically every day, the government's going to have to pay them that extra benefit. They're also going to be eligible anyway for then the £200 and the winter fuel.
But hold on,
I think
Vixen,
it's really ill thought out.
But hold on, isn't actually that just the perfect mechanism? Because what you have is, I read 800,000, but 800,000 pensioners that should be on these pensioner credits that aren't because they either don't know or they couldn't be bothered or for whatever reason aren't, that should be, that qualify, that now will be, and then they will be getting their winter fuel payments, which means the most vulnerable pensioners will be far better looked after now than not in the past because everyone would have got it, but it means that it's slightly fairer, does it not, Vixen?
No, I don't think it is fair because the thing is, I mean, yes, there are going to be some wealthy pensioners. Look, we've got to be realistic. Of course there is. But ultimately, they are people that, have contributed a lot to society. They're in their latter years. And I don't think it's going to make or break us as a country to continue the system as it was. And I think, I think Keir Starmer has really, really got it wrong this time. And I think the very easiest, like one of your panellists said, there are many, many things they could have looked at to save money. And I think this is so vocal and such a big issue for people. And I just, I can only go by my first comment. I think they've shot themselves in the foot and I think there's going to be a backlash. And it's all like them saying they inherited this, they inherited that. Yes, we all know they did, but you know, you can blame back governments till doomsday practically about they did this, so we had to do that. At the end of the day, they are the most vulnerable in society. And what about the ones who are just over that threshold that did rely on that money?
You're hoping, Vixen, that those are the ones that are going to get their pensioners' credit, but we'll find out in the vote next week, I think Tuesday, and we'll see how many Labour MPs do indeed vote against it. That'll be interesting. Thank you very much for your call. We're going to have to move on.